Welcome to Side Hustle City, and thanks for joining us. Our goal is to help you connect to real people who found success turning their side hustle into a main hustle, and we hope you can too. I'm Adam Kaler. I'm joined by Kyle Stevie, my co-host. Let's get started. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Side Hustle City podcast. And trusty co-host Kyle Stevie is unable to make it today because he is doing sales and training salespeople at the second largest freight brokerage in the country here in Cincinnati at TQL. So Andy Paul is with us, who is a sales expert and probably knows a little bit about being a busy salesperson, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Got a little history there, right? You've written a couple books on sales, right?
Just published my third one. Yes.
All right. And you're in San Diego, right?
I am today. Yeah. I split my time between the coasts. So between New York and San Diego. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. My wife's job is in New York, and I've been in, when we got married, I was living in San Diego. She was living in New York. So I moved, but yeah, we go back and forth.
So home is probably New York then, right? Wherever the wife is. Yeah.
But actually she now can do most of her work remote because of the pandemic. So we don't have to be there as frequently as it did before. It's not a bad combination.
Love it. Well, can't get much. You got all the things to do in New York, and then you got the sun and fun in San Diego. You get the best of both worlds.
I sort of do. Yeah. I said, no, it's not hardship duty.
Nice. Well, you've got some pretty cool stats. What are you, LinkedIn's number 8 sales consultant?
Yeah, I think I made a list somewhere about being one of their leading sales experts. But yeah,
I saw that on the invite. Pretty interesting. So tell me a little bit about your background. What got you into sales, and then what led you to, you got a couple books out there. You sound like you know what you're talking about. So tell us what led you here.
Yeah, I've fooled people so far. Well, what got me into sales was, I think, the need to feed myself. And so I came out of college and really had no plan. And like a lot of people, just sort of fell into it. So I started off before I started my own company 20 years ago. I spent a couple decades in tech sales, a lot of time in Silicon Valley, working with startups, both in the computer industry and the PC industry. I worked at Apple in the early days of Apple. And
wow.
Yeah, worked on the satellite communications business for about 15 years, selling large, complex satellite communications networks to big companies around the world. Started my own company back in the year 2000 to a sales consulting company. And along the way, I've published 3 books. I have a podcast myself, which 1,043 episodes so far.
Wow.
Just started getting warmed up. 1,043 episodes. Yeah, I stay busy.
Yeah. And you actually sold your podcast. Talk about that.
Well, the podcast was acquired. Yeah. I was sort of out of the blue. Yeah. You don't really start a podcast unless you're Joe Rogan, I guess. Start a podcast expecting to sell it. And yeah, I certainly didn't. But this company at the time, they were called Ring DNA. They've changed their name to Revenue.io. But software company, and the CEO and the management team was very much aligned with sort of the thought leadership I was putting out in the podcast, and thought it'd be a good thing for them to be associated with, and great for them in terms of SEO and driving people to the website and so on. So yeah, I got acquired in 2020.
Wow. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. We've been doing this for, 2.5 years, something like that now. And our whole goal with the podcast here is how do you empower regular people to become entrepreneurs? And, and it pains me to see people who have the skills and desire to be entrepreneurs, thinking that they have to have a 9-to-5 job, thinking that they have to go about this, living paycheck to paycheck in some cases, when they have the skills, the talent, the ability to be their own boss. But what I always like to tell people is, being your own boss, you're going to be in QuickBooks a quarter of the time. You're going to be sending out invoices and tracking people down for money if you got a service-based business. But, or you got to be a salesperson, or you got to, do something. You got to go speak at things. You've got to, you got to get out there. You got to get the word out about your business.
You got to do all those things.
Talk to customers, whatever your business is, you got to be personable. And talk about that a little bit. Talk about some of the, because somebody told you weren't salesy enough, right? At one point in your career.
Well, yeah, right at the beginning. And yeah, first job out of school after the first training class, first 2-week training session at a regional training center for this, what at the time was the second largest computer company in the world. Yeah, the evaluation from the instructor came back and said, never going to make it in sales. He's just not salesy enough. He's too analytical. And for me, that was just sort of a spur, I guess, that I've always needed throughout my career to say, yeah, well, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? Because I'm not the prototypical salesperson. And what I saw in that training class was people acting in a way, very stereotypically salesy, transactional, self-interested, slightly sleazy feeling. Just like, yeah, I can't. That's not me.
That's hard for me too. Yeah, you feel sleazy. You feel like you're duping someone, but it doesn't have to be that way, right?
Manipulating people.
Yeah, you're manipulating. Yeah.
Right. And no, most certainly doesn't need to be that way. In fact, you most definitely don't need to be that way and shouldn't be. So for me, it just sort of started this journey throughout my entire career that, I've sort of blazed my own trail to say, well, there is a better way. And my way is, sort of aligned with certain principles, but it's, everybody has their own way. And it's increasing over the last 15, 20 years, sort of with the advent of even more technology coming into sales and marketing, is leaders want to have sort of people or have their salespeople comply with processes, right? Process really becomes important. And they try to take the individuality and the autonomy away from the sellers to become this best version of themselves, which they really need to be. And so my latest book, Sell Without Selling Out, is all about how do you take control of your career as a salesperson to sell in a way that's aligned with who you are as a human and to create better buying experiences for your prospects so they'll want to do business with you.
Very interesting. So one of the things, now is this book targeted mostly at, people with typical sales jobs, or can the principles in this book and what you talk about, and I'm sure some of your history is in here, what you've learned, can it be applied to someone who may not be interested in working at a company, may not be, interested in selling computers or whatever. They've got something they want to sell, right?
Everybody has something they want to sell, right?
It's true.
So for anybody whose part of their job entails influencing someone else to take an action, that's who the book is for. It just happens that, largely that happens to be people in sales, but it doesn't have to be people in sales. It could be solopreneurs, entrepreneurs. Certainly they're selling every day themselves, the product, the service they sell. It could be people working in an organization that have to collaborate effectively.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you got to sell yourself all the time. You're building a brand. I mean, no matter what you're doing, you're building a brand, you're building a personality, this persona of yourself to everyone. I mean, if you're in politics, you're selling something, you have to brand yourself, and you have to get people to understand who you are and be able to sell it without being over salesy or seeming like a charlatan, right?
Right. Well,
be authentic.
Well, yes, for sure. I mean, the first thing you sell, quote unquote, when you're doing anything that's involved with trying to influence the actions of someone else, is you have to sell yourself. Is the person has to decide that you are worth investing their time and attention in, and that that are you trustworthy? Why should I talk about in the book? I call this the why you question, and we all have to be able to answer that question. It's not because people are saying, well, why should I trust you? Why should I invest my time with you? Why should I invest my attention in you? Why should I let you come talk to my people? And it's all about you, right? So it's not a question you can answer verbally and say, "Oh, because I'm trustworthy." No, it's how people
trust me. I'm trustworthy.
Trust me, I'm trustworthy. It's how people experience you.
Yes.
So the first impression you make, are you prepared? Are you really interested? Are you listening to understand, not just listening to respond? And people get cues from that, and they make a judgment about you, whether you're, again, worth their time and attention. And that's the first sale, if you will, that you actually make.
So if you haven't been in sales, or say you're a young salesperson, you're out here trying to do something, maybe you sold insurance or something really difficult like that. What I always find out that it seems like there's a lot of people out there with great ideas. They want to start a business. They want to do this. They want to do that, but they have confidence problems when it comes to sales. Do you run into that a lot? And what do you tell people?
What I tell people is that, because people think, well, I can't convince somebody to buy something they don't want to buy. That's sort of the going in position most people have about sales, right? That's my job. I got to convince somebody, persuade somebody to buy something they don't really want to buy. And I'm like, well, that's not the job at all. Right? Our job is, as salespeople or anybody that's trying to, quote unquote, sell something to someone, is you're trying to help them solve a problem. You're trying to help them achieve an outcome that they want to achieve. That has nothing to do with convincing them to do something they don't want to do. That's, on the face of it, it's just counterproductive. So, for people who are sort of thinking, I don't have the confidence and so on, what I tell them is that, a sale starts with the ability to connect with another human being. That's the gating item, right? If you can't do that, that's sort of problematic. But the fact is, everybody can do that, right? Everybody has friends.
Everybody has friends and everybody talks to people and you
have friends. The motion that you go through to connect with a person in a selling situation is the exact same thing you do if you're making a friend. Now, it's not the goal is not to make this person your friend at all, right? They're a prospect, they're a customer. You want to be friendly with them, but the steps you take are the same, right? I mean, if you met somebody in a social situation, back to school night or church or wherever, is the first thing you're going to say to them is, hi, I'm Frank. Hi, I'm Andy. Is you're going to launch into a pitch about yourself, about your house, about your family, about your business, right? You're not going to do that. That's not you. That's not how you make a friend. You're going to ask a question about them. You're going to be interested in them. You're going to want to learn about them. What's important to them. You're going to see if there's some common ground. So what you do, make a friend. It's what you do when you first connect with a potential buyer.
Interesting. Now, some people do have a problem with turning their customers into friends and then giving them deals, right? Like, are they really your friend, or are they just trying to beat you up for a cheaper price or whatever?
I think it was Plato. It may have been Aristotle that said that, in this type of situation, this is a friendship of utility. Right? That's what your customers are. They're a friendship of utility. It's not a friendship of emotion. It's a friendship of, we both have this opportunity to do something. And if we do this thing together, we're each going to achieve something we want, right? So if I can help you succeed, then I have the opportunity to succeed. And the salespeople going with that attitude, the service first, then being friendly is nice.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
There's some research that's been shown. Robert Cialdini, who wrote a couple of great books on the subject, a book called Persuasion. He talks about the research, citing research showing that, the expression is like people buy from people they know, like, and trust. Right. I heard that. He said, what was really a fourth thing to that is that, people typically want to buy from people they know, like, and trust. But the fourth one is that they also like to buy from people they think like them.
Oh, interesting.
So this idea of being a human, being friendly, it costs you nothing to be friendly.
That's it. Some people have struggled with that.
Right. But because sometimes people get into business, I think, well, I've got to put this business face on, right? And, there's lots of examples, and it's sort of increasingly so, certainly in the sales world, where there's these trainers that come along and say, oh, the buyer doesn't have time for small talk. It's like, well, you couldn't be more wrong. There's a whole body, there's bookshelves full of books written about small talk, where the science is really irrevocably clear, is that it's a natural part of forming a connection with another person. It's how you begin to build that rapport that's so essential. So I begin to build that trust that's so important, is to find that there is some common ground, to find that you are a person worth investing time in. So just being yourself is, the way you want to be.
But people, sometimes they go into this and they think they have to be someone else. They have to
salesy.
Yeah, they have to be. There you go. Yeah, they have to be salesy. And apparently you weren't salesy enough at your first job, but now here you are 2 books later and, number 8 on LinkedIn's, most successful sales people, sales trainers or whatever. And, I guess egg on their face, right? Like,
yeah, but this is still the prevalent mode that people fall into and that they're oftentimes trained into is you have to be salesy. You have to act in a way that buyers instinctively resist. So there's a great book that came out a couple of years ago called The Catalyst, written by an author named Jonah Berger. And it's about persuasion. And he cites research that shows that as humans, universally, we resist being persuaded. He called it persuasion reactance.
Yes. Especially if you live in New York, right? There's people trying to scam you all the time, and you got to be anti-scammy, right? Like you've got to no, thank you. I'm busy. I'm moving along here.
Well, that was more in the 70s and 80s. That's not so true anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Back in those days, in every street corner, there's a table set up, and people are doing their games. But yeah, but the point being is people resist it. So why act in a way that people instinctively resist? But yeah, people sort of think they have to put on this act to be a salesperson. And the bottom line is if you want to put it from the perspective of the buyers, which everything should be. And my latest book, Sell Without Selling Out, is all about how you're creating positive buying experiences for the buyer. Yeah, I talk about in the book is, one question a buyer will never ask you is, hey, Adam, yeah, I like your product. I think I want to buy your product, but I've got a problem. And the problem is you're just not salesy enough. Could you be more salesy? And the fact is, no one will ever ask you that.
Nobody will ever say that to you. Yeah.
So it doesn't benefit the buyer. It doesn't benefit you. One of the points I make in the book is that we could universally today just say, look, these set of behaviors that fall into the salesy category, what I call selling out, we could stop using them today.
Yeah.
Every salesperson in the world that acts that way could go cold turkey, and they wouldn't be any the worse off for it.
Yeah. Yeah. True. What do you think? Okay. So, I kind of come from raised in a pretty bad neighborhood. People were pretty abrasive, I guess is the word you could use. New Jersey people, except Cincinnati. But, when we start a business, if we get, if people refuse us or turn us down or whatever, there's a tendency to, and this may not just be to my people, but, a lot of people personally take offense. And I think that's, something you got to quickly get over in sales is it's not personal. It's not about you. How can you internalize that? How can you look at yourself and say, why do I keep getting denied? Why do people say no to me? What is the reason? And instead of getting upset, how can you learn from that? And I'm sure you've dealt with these personalities before.
Sure. So in many cases, I'll be a little contrarian for you. In many cases, it is personal. It's not personal as in you're a bad person, personal. It's personal as in I, the buyer, invested some of my time and attention with you, the seller, and I got nothing out of it. I didn't get a return on that investment. So it's not worth any more time. So thank you for the call, or thank you for coming to see me, but yeah, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So oftentimes that is a personal judgment, but I said it's not personal in a sort of negative. I said you're a bad person. It's just, yeah, I invested my time and attention in you, whether it's a phone call, a Zoom call, you stopped by the office, whatever. I didn't get anything out of it. So I'm just gonna make the decision not to give you any more of my time and attention.
Yeah. See, and even when you say that, when you're like, it wasn't worth my time. Like if someone is that direct it would boil my blood. Do you know what I mean? Like it would just,
but that's, they say no instead, or we're not interested, or now's not the right time, and as you mature in your career, you begin to hopefully get better at discerning, is it you or is it really not the right time? And you learn from your past experiences. If you're finding you're getting a lot of no's, then these days you can easily record all your phone calls you make, outbound phone calls you make to customers, all these conversational intelligence tools that exist. Listen to your phone calls, analyze them. These tools come with tools enabled to analyze the calls and how much you're talking versus the buyer and the keywords you're using. And at what point in time you may be saying certain things that cause the customers to, shut down. You can do that. And it's pretty easy. So analyze what you're doing, experiment. Right. One of the great quotes I have in my new book is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, all life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better. And it's so important because we all sell differently, because we all interact with the world differently. We're all unique, right? And every time we are out as salespeople talking to one of the 7.5 billion people in the world, that's a meeting that's never going to be replicated by any other two sets of people. So we have to constantly be thoughtful and intentional about what we're doing, what we're saying, and how we're getting better. And so we always have to be analyzing what we've done. So if we're getting a lot of no's, well, we can keep running into that brick wall if we want, or as I said, record your calls, or have a manager come along with you, or have a peer come along with you and get some feedback. Just don't keep doing what you've been doing.
Yeah. Cause that's insanity, right?
Well, yeah, reportedly. Right. So and I think there is no one personality type that's suited to sales. I've seen people from across the personality spectrum do a great job at it, have fulfillment in their careers from doing it, but they do it differently. And then the other people, and that's fine. That's what we want to encourage. That's one of the main themes of this book is taking control of that. Even in a corporate setting where perhaps you have managers that would prefer you do it a different way, hold yourself accountable. Say, look, as I did in my career, it's like, I just can't do it that way. Here's what I think is a better way for me. I'm still going to hit my number. Yeah. But it's not going to be just like everybody else. And that's okay. Most managers will say, fine. They don't care. You be you. Right. Yeah. And I'll help you any way I can to become this best version of yourself. But you have to be accountable for results. And that's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had some personality folks on here that really dig into, it's actually a VC firm here that before you even talk to them, you have to go on their website and you have to take a personality test. And there's certain personality types, Myers-Briggs, and, that they want, that they say are more successful. I think INTJs are the most successful startup founders. And I'm an ENTP, and on my disc, it says I'm a persuader. So, I mean, I guess I'm suited for sales. I just hate doing it. I think it's like a lot of what you talked about earlier, where I feel like I'm constantly like, I feel like, I've got to be a certain way when I do sales, Yeah. Well, I said you have the wrong perspective on what your job is. So if you ask many sellers, they think, well, my job is to go out and persuade somebody to buy my product. Yeah. As we started talking about earlier. And that's really not your job in sales at all. In fact, in any world where you're collaborating with people to get something accomplished, your job is to listen, first and foremost, listen to your buyer, understand what are the most important things to them in terms of the challenges they face and the outcomes they want to achieve, and then help them get that. It's a whole different perspective. My job is just to persuade you to buy my product. Then whether I understand what's really most important to you or not doesn't really matter, because I just got to sell you my product. Yeah. Right. I'm just, somebody on a mission. Yeah. And you think about that experience for the buyers is pretty horrible, right? Because this is just sort of seller centric in the extreme, because it's all about what they want, not what the buyer. Whereas instead, if you go out with the service first mentality and say, I'm here to listen to, and not just to know something about you. I'm here to really understand what are the most important things to you. And then I'm going to help you get that.
That's now, definitely a listening. You definitely have to listen to get that.
Well, it starts, you got to ask great questions to get that, and then listen for sure. But that's a whole different way of approaching it. And now what you're doing when you approach it from that perspective, especially when you make the customer feel understood, when you get that level of understanding. In my book, I lay out sort of the stages of understanding that we all go through to learning something new. That's really valuable to the buyer. It's like, oh, got it. These people really understand what's important to me. What happens then? Oftentimes you get the business. You create this experience that's different from the experience they're having with the other sellers. There's been a number of research papers done, studies done talking about decision making, at least in business to business decision making. And what they find is that the majority of the criteria they use to make the buyers use to make the decision are based not on the product or the company selling the product. It's based on their experience with you as an individual seller. So if you're a solopreneur out there trying to sell your services, or an entrepreneur trying to sell your company's products or services, it's not about those things. It's about you first and foremost. And if you really want to differentiate yourself, then you learn how to differentiate the experience you provide the buyer as you sell the product to them.
And they're not having pity on you. It's not that, it's about you and then you're like, oh, please. And they have pity on you.
It's
they're
not
trying
that
to,
at all. I mean, that would be what I call selling out. I think I always felt like the first order I ever took in my professional career, I always felt like it's a pity sale, but yeah, whatever, they happen. But no, that's not the way you're going to succeed.
Or if you're young and they see you're young and you're trying and they're like, I'll give this guy a break,
I think that's where it happens. Yeah. In my case, happened on Friday afternoon, end of a long week. It was like, oh, give me a boost.
Yeah.
Going forward. Excuse me. But in general, yeah, it's all about the buyer and how they perceive dealing with you.
Interesting. So do you have any experience in academia? Because it sounds like you'd be a really good professor.
No, I don't. But yeah, sales to some degree, it's part of the thing for me that's made it fun over the course of my career. It's just helping people learn new things about their business and what they can achieve. So there's a little bit of an educational component there.
Yeah, totally.
You always sort of feel like you're educating to a certain degree. Yeah,
you have that feel about you. You have that like authority kind of. I know what I'm talking about. I'm confident in what I'm saying here. I've written 2 books. I worked at Apple. Like, oh man, everything's there. Like it's all there. Like if I was a student, I'd just be sitting there listening the whole time, just soaking it in, taking notes.
Well, if people want to buy my book, and that'd be a great thing for them to do, to learn all about that.
Put it in every college. Put it in every university library.
We're working on that.
Get it in the hands of students. Oh, are you? What are you doing there?
Well, there's an increasing number of universities that provide bachelor's degrees in sales. And it's not a huge number, but it's growing. I think it's 125 to 130 universities. And then a bigger number that offer some sort of certificate program in sales. And I think that's fantastic. I think that we want people who are still in their educational path is to get a better sense of what sales is and what it means and how to do it, rather than just having their first exposure on the job. So yeah, there's some programs out there doing a fantastic job training new salespeople for local employers. And I think that's a great thing. So yeah, we're trying to work with those that are doing that and have my book, Sell Without Selling Out, become sort of a foundational text for them. So
if you were building that course at a university or, I don't plan on going to university, but I want to educate myself on sales because I plan on starting up a company. Sell Without Selling Out, book number 1. What are some other books? What are some other authors? What are some other channels? Are there YouTube channels out there? Are there, what about the podcast? Where do I start? Like, how do I get the foundation together?
It's a great question. I would, if you're new to sales, I think that before you make a lot of decisions about who you want to sort of follow and so on, is you got to get a little experience, a little taste of it, because then you sort of start getting a better sense of about, when you read something written by somebody, that resonates with me or that doesn't resonate with me. So, maybe getting a little taste of it first, but there's never been more information available for people podcast wise. And it's the same thing as someone wants to listen to my podcast. If they think, well, I really like what Andy says, I think I'll subscribe to this podcast. Great. But they may find somebody else that is more appropriate. So go out and sample, I guess is the word I'm talking about. Go out and sample a bunch of podcasts, go out and sample a bunch of books. Doesn't cost you much. I mean, especially these days, you can go to an author's website and download a free chapter. You can do that on my website.
Yeah, I saw that. You got the free chapter thing. You got Daniel Pink on here talking about your book, which he's one of my favorites.
Oh, good. Yeah, and he's fantastic. So it's just sample. And I think that's the best thing for people to do is just sample widely. As podcasts, there are YouTube channels that people have up with some great content on it. Just sample, see what resonates with you.
I love that. I was not expecting that answer, but I think that is 100% true. I think it's going to be different for everybody. And I think your point is super valid. I think that, maybe I like Daniel Pink, but other people might not. I don't know who wouldn't like sell without selling out. That's crazy talk.
I think so. But, and so far, it's lots of people seem to like it.
Well, what's the feedback you've gotten and how long did it take you to write that? Cause we have people come on a lot of times here that have written books and it says it could be a very profitable side hustle. Even if it's not monetarily profitable, it is still good for your brand that we talked about earlier.
Well, yeah. Well, I think there's a thing with consultants that typically, that write books, to your point, is sort of a branding exercise, a calling card, perhaps. Hey, this is what I stand for. But these days, I think that's much less useful because you have the opportunity to go every day on LinkedIn and talk about something that you stand for. It doesn't need to be 3 years of work to publish a book. In fact, I'd advise against that. I would tell people as a first step is build your audience on LinkedIn and build your brand on LinkedIn. If you're a consultant or you're a solopreneur, it doesn't have to be, selling a book, but everybody sort of has an obligation to become somewhat of a creator these days, right?
That's very true. A lot of people just want to do that full time. A lot of people do. Some people do it full time.
Some do.
Yeah.
But everybody sort of has that obligation these days, even individual salespeople at companies, because before a customer engages with you, they're going to look at your LinkedIn profile.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to say, well, what's this person stand for? Right? What's their point of view about this business, the business they're in, the business I'm in that they're going to talk to me about? Do they have an opinion? Things like that. And it's, people are going to make judgments about you based on what they find on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah. How envious are you of the kids nowadays that can just go on YouTube and learn anything? I mean, you look like a card catalog guy, right? Like,
I was in college for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I was a card catalog guy and I remember struggling to find anything in the library through the card catalog. And now it's just a search away. It's like just type away and you find your answer. You go on, Udemy and you learn whatever, or Reddit and you type in a question and 18 people answer it, Well,
I think it's certainly a different experience than what sounds like you went through and I went through in college. Yes.
Yeah.
It would be, well, thing is, so we talk about, what would it be like if we had to do that? If we had to do it, it would just be normal because that's normal now. So the kids don't have another frame of reference for it. But yeah, it gets back to the same thing sample, right? Just sample widely.
Yeah.
Learn a lot. In terms of me with writing the book, the question you'd ask about that is it took, in aggregate, it didn't take that much time. It's just spread over a long period of time.
So little bits, like you a little chunk here, a little chunk there.
Well, sort of big chunk here and a big chunk there.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I started right before the pandemic and then sort of set it aside during the first sort of 6-9 months of the pandemic, just because enough else was going on in life, and then picked it up again, which is good. I think I recommend sometimes people start and then stop and then come back to it again, because I rethought certain things and in terms of how I want to present the information and write about it, which was very useful. So yeah, I'd say in terms of hard writing, maybe it was 10, 12 weeks, maybe.
Oh, that's not bad. Yeah.
2 years. Yeah.
Oh, that's not bad. Okay. Yeah. And it's just baby steps. Like sometimes you just gotta, you do a little bit here, you do a little bit there. Every day you're working towards whatever that goal is, you know? And as long as you could do that, it's amazing like what you can accomplish, the big things you can accomplish. Sure. But I think a lot of people, they look at big things like they have to get it done overnight, and you don't.
Well, I mean, you could look at it. I mean, I know novelists work this way. They set themselves goals and write 1,000 words a day. Mm-hmm. Well, 2 months, you've got a 60,000 word book. It's 200-page novel. And you got a first draft. It's like there's a contest. I forget. It takes place in November, sort of nationwide, not contest, but sort of competition vaguely where, people write a novel in the space of a month.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, if you do 1,000 words a day for 30 days, you got
something there. Yeah.
So depending on the format of the book, if it's a conventional paperback format, that's going to be a 250-page paperback novel. So yeah, it's to your point. If you just have it that way, set it up, have the discipline. You can be surprised what you can complete. Now, that doesn't mean you still have to edit and rework and so on. That takes a lot of time, but just the basic creation, then you sort of get into a flow state when you do that with that sort of continuity that makes a lot of fun.
Well, you're on the podcast here. I wonder just, as an author, how much time do you commit when you write a book? So there was a time you had to, you had to take out of your day and out of, doing what you have to do from a business perspective to write the book. But what kind of time do you commit now to promote the book? To, do you have like readings? Do you have like, how does that work?
The physical book tour isn't yet back. So we've been doing a podcast tour. So yours is one of them that we're visiting. So probably over the course of 2-3 months, we'll do close to 90 to 100 episodes of other people's podcasts.
Wow. Oh, that's a significant amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's good and get more people exposed to what we're doing. So I have a big audience for my podcast, but there's such a huge world out here. Most people still don't know anything about me or the book. So there's a lot of green field for us to go reach out to. Well,
and the more that's out there, the more, the easier it is to publish, the easier it is, not just with a book, but with building a business, learning about sales, doing all this other stuff. The more accessible it is to you, the more accessible it is to other people. So, back in the day, if you were the hardcore card cataloger and you went out there and you read every book, not everybody was going to do that because it wasn't as accessible, right? So you had less competition. Now the barrier to entry is much lower. Like it's a lot easier for people to learn stuff. So if you're not out here constantly educating yourself, constantly learning and figuring out your whatever niche is and, building your brand, somebody else is going to do it.
Oh, yeah. Somebody else is doing it.
Oh, they are 100%.
Yeah. There's no if about it. They are doing it.
Yeah, that's right.
So we have easy access to megaphones these days. Everybody has easy access to a megaphone. That's, could be LinkedIn. It could be Facebook, could be TikTok, whatever. Choose one. Be consistent at it. As I said, have a point of view. Put yourself out there. It takes, courage with a very small c to put yourself out there. And if you do it on a consistent basis, you'd be surprised what could happen. If you have an interesting point of view, if you focus on writing about things people are interested in, yeah, you may wake up one day and say, gosh, I've got 50,000 followers on LinkedIn. How'd that happen?
Wow. Yeah, that's true. And it's just consistency. It's persistence. It's, yeah. And you got to have something that people want, and you can't be what we talked about earlier. One of these NFL players who spend all this time building up their profile just to ruin it by one act, don't be that guy. Yeah.
Well, no, don't be that guy. But I mean, that without drawing a direct analogy is yeah, if you're creating a brand for yourself that's about a certain thing, you do have to be intentional about continuing to add value to the people that are consuming that content, and also be intentional about what things that could happen that could diminish that brand that you spent time building. So you got to be, I don't say careful about you write. You have to be considerate about what you write.
Yes, because it could be one comment away from, next thing you know, somebody picking that up and splattering it all across the internet. And then just, you said all this great stuff that helped people or whatever. And then just one comment that could screw it all up.
Well, it could certainly put a dent on it for sure.
Yeah.
And alienate part of your audience. And so, and this is not, it's not talking about political correctness. I'm just talking about even within the scope of a field you're in is, you just have to be considered and intentional about what you're saying.
So you also talked about, you'd mentioned your wife, and I'm sure she keeps you in check too, just like mine does. But what role does she play in all of this? What does she do for a living? Like how does she supported you in your endeavors here?
Yeah. Oh no, just been. Yeah. So this is my second wife. For me, it was everything. I mean, I hadn't written a book before meeting her and getting married, and so been hugely supportive. She's an academic. She's a associate dean at the NYU School of Medicine. She's an associate professor as well. So, academic, lectures a lot, and been very inspirational for me because she's this person that people gravitate to, and she has a huge impact within the institution where she's been teaching for a long time. It's sort of, some people sort of say like, the mother of the med school, because she's sort of the person everybody goes to, and there's a problem. And I just sort of aspire to have the same level of impact on people that she does.
I love it. So some of that academic vibe might have rubbed off on you. Maybe that's where I got it from. So when I said that you got this academic authority thing, like persona to you, maybe some of that's rubbed off. You never know.
You never know. It's very possible.
Yeah. You watch her and you see how she does her thing, and she's got to sell people. She's got to sell people on the stuff when she's doing these speeches and she's up there on stage. I mean, she's selling at that moment. Like you're always selling, right?
Sort of. I think for her, it's more, so she's both in an academic role and an administrative role. Is in her administrative role, she has to collaborate with people. So yes, to that degree, there's that selling going on, as Dan Pink talks about in his book.
Yeah.
That we're all basically involved in it at all times.
I love it. AndyPaul.com. That's where they can learn a little bit more about you. And it's not just about the book. I mean, you consult as well, right?
I do. I do that. I do a lot of coaching of C-level executives and high performers. It's one of my specialties, people that think they're sort of at the top of the profession, but want to go even more.
Oh, wow.
So I work with people like that. Speaking with groups and do the full range of things.
So you're kind of a psychologist as well, a little bit. Maybe you need to, it's a little bit of that. Maybe you get a certificate in something and append it to all these other sales skills you've got, because I can imagine working with those guys is, there's some egos there, but, I mean, you've got to be on their level, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, but people need coaches, high-end athletes, like golfers and track and field athletes, and they all have their personal coaches. And sales is certainly, I think, the closest in business. That's the closest analogy to performance-based sports.
Oh, so, wow.
You're going to get coaching from your employer and your manager, but sometimes you need that other perspective to really help you achieve at the next level that you're trying to achieve at. And so, I sort of fill that role for people.
I love it. So if you put your coaching hat on, your executive coaching hat right now, and you could leave the podcast and tell people who are aspiring entrepreneurs who are, thinking about doing a side hustle, who are maybe not super confident in their sales abilities, what would you leave them with today?
Just got to try it. Experiment, as I talked about before. Put yourself out there. All life has this element of risk where you're exposing yourself, right? If you believe in anything, you talk about anything, you take the risk to meet someone, potential romantic partner at a social setting or a bar or something. We're all taking these little risks. So take some little risks if you want to do a side hustle. And that's where it starts. Don't aim for it's not a home run you're trying to hit. You're trying to hit a single at first.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the way you wrote your book.
Start. Just start. That's the way to do it.
I love it. It's like a snowball going downhill, right? Like it just grows and grows and grows.
It can be. Yeah. It can be. I mean, but if it's a side hustle and you've got a 9-to-5 job, you have to be sensible about how much time you can invest in it. One of the things that we do in my business is we work with people that are making the transition from being an employee to starting their own thing and helping them build their brands. It's part of our consulting practice. And they all started just sort of that first step, right? In some cases, it could be building their audience on LinkedIn. It could be, I'm going to start posting daily because I have this idea for this product perhaps I want to sell, and I want to start a company around it. But I don't want to go full time on it right now. I just want to explore a little bit, try things out. Great. Well, no matter what you get into, probably the most important thing you can do is start building your brand online on LinkedIn.
Interesting. I see LinkedIn as like a cesspool. For whatever reason, I just constantly get hit up by like random messages. Hey,
oh, sure.
Yeah.
There is that.
Outsource your stuff to us. Yeah. It's just
undoubtedly. Yes. The direct message inbox and LinkedIn is problematic, but that's where business is being done. That's where people are having the conversations. People become customers, and you need to have a brand, a self-identifiable brand. Why should someone want to talk to you? What are they going to get out of that conversation?
I love it.
And that requires a certain amount of commitment to creating content.
Yeah. And it's not easy. It's you got to dedicate yourself to it, and you got to be patient. You can't just expect overnight you're going to get 1,000 likes on your LinkedIn post. No.
I mean, sure, you might get one that does that, but the secret is having many that do that. So that's the difference.
That's a big difference. So Andy, tell us some other ways at andypaul.com. Is there any other ways you'd like people to reach out to you? LinkedIn, maybe?
LinkedIn for sure. Yeah. Just search Andy Paul on LinkedIn, and so hard to miss. And I post a lot on LinkedIn. It is, for me, that is the place where I'm having conversations with people that are interested in things we're doing. So come join the conversation on LinkedIn, andypaul.com, listen to my podcast, Sales Enablement with Andy Paul, and buy my book. Yeah. Sell Without Selling Out at Amazon and any other place you buy a book.
Well, I'll be checking you out on LinkedIn for sure. I'm going to be following you. Very interesting.
That'd be great.
What a great career on top of that. I mean, it's outstanding. So, and thanks for putting this out there. Thanks for taking the time to write a book like this and share your thoughts and your experiences with people. I think it's very commendable.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me on the show.
Sure thing, Andy.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Side Hustle City. Well, you've heard from our guests. Now let's hear from you. Join our community on Facebook, Side Hustle City. It's a group where people share ideas, share their inspirational stories, and motivate each other to be successful and turn their side hustle into their main hustle. We'll see you there, and we'll see you next week on the show. Thank you.